Imagine if every morning you woke up with your brain supercharged for peak performance and flow just by changing how you sleep. Well, the science shows that this is possible, and by dialing this in, you can access potential that you didn't even know was lying dormant within you. Now, I'm Rian, co-founder and CEO of the Flow Research Collective. We've trained everyone from Audi Accenture to the US Air Force on how to use neuroscience-based principles to access flow states at will. Now, after years of internships as a teenager, I finally got my one shot to prove myself, building a company with a famous author that I admired for a long time. But it was sink or swim, no outside funding, pure bootstrapping. We had to make enough money to run, fund, and grow the business at the same time, or I'd have to return to muggy Ireland and get an average Joe job, proving all my doubting Irish brethren that they were right all along. The plan was to put on this event in Miami to generate enough capital to run the business for the next 6 months. So I was getting the sales collateral into place, taking sales calls, building the marketing funnels and event curriculum, and starting to hire enough team members to make the whole thing happen. Due to the pressure, I fell victim to the hustle guru mentality, working until my eyes bled and taking pride in my ability to push myself on grossly low amounts of sleep. But this approach backfired badly. My body ached, my irritability was high, noises and light were more agitating than normal, almost like this persistent slight migraine in the background. And I was abusing caffeine, and the caffeinated state combined with the fatigue from low sleep was even worse. And I would get these midday crashes, brain zonked and barely able to talk, where I'm working and it's like trying to move through molasses. And I just felt kind of sick all the time. By the time I got to bed, I was too wired to sleep, would end up binging YouTube and staying up too late, waking up even more underslept and repeating the cycle day after day after day. Then one day, many years ago, as I was about 3 months into building this company, I had an interview with a key team member. Someone crucial for the live event that we were hosting in Miami that was going to be the backbone of this entire vision we had. 7 minutes into the interview, the screen starts to blur. My head tilts down and boom, I end up nodding off. The sheer humiliation mixed with the crushing fear that I was blowing my one chance at building something exceptional was a punch to the gut. And that's when I had a desperate call with my current business partner, Steven Kotler. Steven is the foremost authority on peak performance and flow state, and he shared with me a counterintuitive truth that people don't emphasize enough. He said, Rian, you already know that sleep is important. Everyone knows that. But then he explained to me how and why sleep is the biggest driver of flow state and peak performance, which is exactly what I needed at the time to bootstrap the company. Just consider the definition of flow. Flow is an optimal state of consciousness where we feel and perform at our best. It turns out sleep is sort of the other side of the coin. It's an optimal state of consciousness where we repair, rebuild, and recover to make peak performance a possibility. Flow and sleep function like a seesaw. It turns out that while sleep is a timeout for your mind, it's a workout for your brain and body. It's not a gap in your productivity. It's not an inconvenience that takes us away from work. It's an extreme form of productivity that you're just not awake to observe. We take it for granted because the mind isn't conscious to see everything that's happening in the brain. But here's a glimpse of what you're getting done while sleeping. First off, your energy is being replenished and your tissues and nerve cells are regenerated. Your memories are reorganized for optimal accessibility and your learning capacity is increasing. You get a resilience upgrade so you can better handle stress. You get a surge of positive emotion and decrease your susceptibility to anxiety and depression. Your motor skills are enhanced. You add another day to your lifespan. Your food cravings decrease, your skin tightens, and your brain gets shielded from cancer and dementia. You even ward off colds and the flu and lower your risk of heart attacks, stroke, and diabetes. You're charged with motivation, and of course, you're primed to enter flow state. And you don't even have to do anything. You just get to lie there and let it unfold. Just imagine how productive it would feel to be able to watch yourself do all of these things while awake. This means that like flow, sleep is a high performance state. It's no wonder my hardcore hustling to try and bootstrap my first company was such a grind. I was never giving my brain a chance to replenish itself so it could create flow state through sleeping properly. And this led to a critical problem that you may be experiencing yourself. Without successful sleep, we call this your exhaustion ceiling. Think of it as the hidden limit to your current performance. With suboptimal sleep, you're unknowingly operating far below your true potential. Successful sleep is the key to shattering this ceiling and unlocking what you're truly capable of. Unlike the ceiling of a room, which is visible to your eyes, the exhaustion ceiling is hard to see because the trickle-down effects are harder to track. You know how this goes. You wake up underslept. The first order consequence is brain fog, low energy, feeling kind of crappy. But the second order consequences then kick in. In the morning, you skip your usual audiobook, instead opting for a random YouTube video that you watch in bed to get a quick dopamine hit. Then the third order consequences of poor sleep kick in. You're a little too zonked to blast through important work, so you get stuck in inbox clearing instead. And on this trickle-down effect goes, with a series of dominoes being flicked in the wrong direction. This was something I learned after years of grinding it out with less sleep than I needed. During this period, I remember noticing that one of my colleagues was aggravating the living hell out of me. For completely unrelated reasons, I bought a sleep tracker around this time. This was one of the things that helped me realize just how off my key flow proneness markers were, including my resting heart rate, HRV, and hours spent across each stage of sleep. After dialing in my sleep, I couldn't believe how nice my colleague had become. There was nothing aggravating at all about him. And I realized, wait a second, nothing's changed. He's still calling me 6 times a week. His words aren't any different. It's me who's different. As I continued to raise this exhaustion ceiling, I was shocked at how many problems disappeared. Concentration issues, sluggish decision-making, and emotional irritability vanished into thin air. My insecurity around successful people dissipated. My inconsistent self-discipline, all gone. And I couldn't help but wonder what other untapped potential I had been missing out on all the years before. What ideas I didn't have, what conversations I didn't decide to initiate. That was the moment I learned that sleep is the biggest domino on everything that I care about in life. Many of our biggest problems are automatically solved with successful sleep. The stressful, frantic nature of the job, the difficulties concentrating, the constant headbutting with the boss or colleague, all of these things melt away. Why? Well, because they weren't the root problem. They were downstream effects of your exhaustion ceiling being too low. This sleep-caused performance deficit highlights that you don't even know how good life can be, who you truly are, until you are repeatedly getting successful sleep. It's as if you've spent your life seeing the world slightly blurry, accepting it as normal. Successful sleep is the prescription that brings everything into sharp focus. And here's the thing, we tend to think our sleep is suboptimal because of bad habits, stress, a lack of discipline, or a crammed calendar. But in reality, it's because you're yet to build a sleep-first mindset. The solution is to prioritize it the same way you would prioritize work, obsessing about sleep like you obsess over your ambitions, because sleep fuels ambition. Here's the rule to remember. Your flow state gets created while you sleep. You are building up the neurochemistry while asleep that flow consists of. Now, rewinding to when I was building my first company, now that I understood these pieces about sleep and flow, it quickly eroded the hustle mentality that I used to have. I now knew that sleep was a high performance state, and I had finally fully adopted a sleep first mindset. The problem was, I wasn't exactly sure where to begin. Naively, I thought perhaps the solution was just to get as much sleep as possible, but I kept wondering, am I getting enough sleep? A good night's rest seemed mostly a matter of luck. I hoped I would wake up feeling refreshed, but it was kind of like a roll of the dice. Then the next sleep revelation hit me when Dr. Andrew Huberman spoke at one of our first conferences on flow. Sleep, as it turns out, is a skill that can be trained, which means it's something you can get better at. Similar to flow, we don't tend to think of sleep as a skill, but in reality it is, and it's trainable. And the skill of sleep fuels the skill of flow. I'd already made so much progress, but the idea that I could master sleep thrilled me. I decided to treat sleep as a skill to be mastered, so I started paying attention to my sleep composition. Based on the research, sleep has many different stages. There's REM, light non-REM, and deep non-REM sleep. All of these stages are essential. These stages are marked by distinct types of brainwave activity: slow wave, delta, theta, and alpha, and fast wave, beta. These brainwaves are the oscillations of large populations of neurons all synchronizing and coordinating. And I learned that we want 1 to 2 hours of deep sleep and over 2 hours of REM sleep. While most mammals experience REM sleep, monkeys are a notable exception. This is the crucial difference between us and our primate relatives. Insufficient REM compromises our capacity for concentration, which makes REM indispensable for flow. Now, on my path to sleep mastery, at first my progress was slow, and that's because I was guilty of a few mistakes. First, I treated sleep as compressible. It would be the thing I would shrink if the day spilled over. And the day often did spill over. Work would run straight into the evening. I would only have 2 hours to breathe. By then it would be so late, I was forced to get by on less than 8 hours of sleep. Because of this, sleep used to be the thing I'd shorten if my workday ran over, the thing I'd compress. And you could probably relate to the impulse to compress sleep. Sleep is the one thing that makes room for seemingly more important stuff in your crammed calendar. Instead, because sleep is a vital part of the work, I learned it was key to view it as fixed and non-negotiable, non-compressible. What helped me was to start thinking about the day kind of like a Tetris game. In Tetris, blocks drop into a fixed container. You can't move or expand or deepen the container that the blocks drop into to fit more blocks in. And the skill here is to fit all the different blocks of our day, tasks, activities, obligations, hangout time, whatever it is, into that fixed container. That means if you want flow and peak performance, you can no longer compress sleep. Sleep defines the boundaries, like the boundaries are defined in the Tetris game. This also means you'll need to forecast sleep, planning travel and life around high quality sleep. Instead of planning trips or flights based on what's fastest, non-stop, or cheapest, we want to bring sleep up to the top of our decision-making criteria. Now, another mistake I made was I disregarded sleep timing. I realized that while I was getting perfect sleep some nights, I wasn't getting enough of it. And I'm embarrassed to admit how long it took me to learn this. But eventually, I really internalized the golden rule here. To get the optimal 8 hours of sleep, you need to spend 9 hours in bed. Here are the 5 steps to getting high flow sleep. The first is the 80-20 of high flow sleep. Armed with my sleep first mindset, I decided to synthesize as much of the research on sleep as I possibly could. And what I learned surprised me. You can distill almost everything that most moves the needle on sleep into a single sentence. The rule to live by when it comes to sleep. And that is to go to bed deaf, blind, cold, and hungry at the same time every night. Here are the exact levers to pull to make this happen, to abide by this single sentence. The first lever is sleep timing. The difference between days when you cruise through your work and days when you drag your feet are often determined by sleep timing and its consistency. Your homeostatic drive and circadian rhythm are out of sync on the down days, all because we stay up late on weekends or we work late, so we need more wind down time, but we're exhausted, so we get our phone out at night and end up hours over our ideal sleep time, or we're just excited to be awake and don't want to sleep. It doesn't seem like a big deal as long as we still get plenty of sleep, but when this happens, our bedtime and wake up times shift, and this comes with a cost. Sleepiness and wakefulness are two independent functions, and inconsistent sleep timing can lead to what's called social jet lag. Social jet lag is the misalignment between your body's natural sleep-wake cycle, your internal clock, and the timing demands of your work or social schedule. This misalignment happens when the chemical signal to sleep, which is adenosine buildup, happens while your internal sleep-wake cycle, regulated by light and melatonin and the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain, is on a different schedule. The result is your body fights itself, making quality sleep an impossibility. Think of your sleep schedule as your internal time zone. Every time you hit snooze or stay up late, you force your body to change time zones abruptly. No wonder you feel groggy and jet lagged, even when you catch up on sleep. So here's how to regulate these two processes to dial in your sleep timing. First, build your sleep container. This is the Tetris container we touched on earlier that your sleep fits into. You create this container by doing two things. First, setting a bedtime alarm. Train yourself to go to bed at the same time each night. And second, set a wake-up alarm. Force yourself to get up. In the beginning, this might cause you to feel fatigued, but that fatigue will make it easier to go to bed at the right hour that following night. It's a corrective mechanism. Now here's the key, condition yourself to never budge on your wake-up time. And equally important, never spend time in bed after you wake up. This conditions your bed to be used for something other than sleep. The rule is wake up, get up. Knowing you'll wake up at the same time every day will increase your bedtime compliance. This is how you can avoid the social jet lag that comes from desyncing your homeostatic drive and circadian rhythm. To help yourself wake up and stay up, place your alarm out of reach, forcing yourself to get up for a cortisol boost that fights the urge to crawl back to bed. Blast yourself with light, a sunrise alarm or ideally sunlight to trigger alertness. And when choosing when to go to bed and wake up, don't fall for the trap of setting an aspirational time that's too far from reality to be useful. Instead, the best time for your bedtime and wake-up alarms is close to what you're already doing naturally. For example, if you naturally go to bed at 11 p.m., pick that time and wake up 9 hours later at 8 a.m. Don't make it hard. To help with this, plan your day in reverse. Know when to eat, dinner, socialize, and finish work so you can hit that bedtime. Carve out your cutoff times and stick to them, and build in more buffer than you think you'll need. Don't be back to back with anything, because often events will bleed into the next, and that'll spill over into the sleep block being compressed. To make this easier, leverage incentives and consequences. Make waking up rewarding with something you truly enjoy. A beautiful sunrise, delicious coffee, a lovely morning routine, your favorite podcast, or waking up and getting straight into flow with whatever work you're excited to do. Similarly, create an irresistible bedtime routine. A warm bath, a good book, or a special cup of tea that allures you to want to go to bed, and be consistent with that bedtime. Then, here are a few optimizations to fall asleep faster, stay asleep, or easily fall back asleep if you wake up in the middle of the night. Let's reorient to the sentence we started with for the 80-20 of high flow sleep. Go to bed deaf, blind, cold, and hungry at the same time every night. That brings us to lever 2 for high flow sleep, going to bed deaf. When I first started tracking my sleep tracker kept showing middle of the night disturbances. I was too sleepy to know these were happening, but the data was clear. Then I realized the faint hum of the refrigerator cycled on and off while I was asleep. This would wake me up without me really even noticing, because I wouldn't fully wake up night after night. On a whim, I tried earplugs. For the first time in years, I slept through the night, and it had a noticeable impact on how easy it was for me to get into flow the next morning. Noise as low as 33 decibels can stimulate hormone releases, cortical arousals, and bodily movement during sleep. You want either silence or white noise, which has been shown to improve sleep quality. Use earplugs, or if you sleep on your back, you might prefer shooting earmuffs. So go to bed deaf, and as a bonus tip, make sure to get the gummy silicone earplugs. They're infinitely better than the traditional ones. Next up is lever 3, going to bed blind. You're going to bed at the same time every night, deaf, now let's add blind to the mix. Keeping the room dark ensures the release of melatonin and prevents the release of wakefulness neurochemicals, such as cortisol and adenosine. Darkness leads to less fragmented sleep, deeper sleep, and improved concentration the following day. Use blackout curtains, darken the LEDs of any electronic devices with black tape, or remove those devices from the room entirely. Or keep it simple. Get a sleep mask to block light from your eyes, especially if light leaks in the morning or from other rooms in the house. I remember trying to tape down the curtains in my room in Ireland. A friend came over and laughed. He said, "Why don't you just get a sleep mask, you dope?" That takes care of the dark, but there's something just as important on the other side of the day. A common phrase regarding sleep is a good night's sleep starts the moment we wake up, because light has a central role in the regulation of our circadian rhythms. Luminosity should reach at least 1,000 lux in intensity to have such an effect. The best possible source for this is direct sunlight upon waking. That's at the start of the day. As the day winds down, you want to avoid the blue spectrum light. White LED lighting suppresses melatonin production 5 times more than incandescent light bulbs. Then mind your tech. Turn on the blue light reduction settings on your screens. To significantly reduce melatonin suppressing light, change the screen's tint to red, reduce the white point, and create a shortcut or automation for that setting. It's so simple, but it significantly reduces blue light exposure. This doesn't give you an excuse to use your phone before bed. It's best to avoid it entirely for 2 hours before bed, but it will mitigate melatonin suppression due to blue light. The reason why this is so important doesn't only come down to melatonin suppression. The last blue light exposure you have in the day is similar to sunset for our ancestors. After the exposure, you get a small surge of energy. This made sense for our ancestors because that energy helped them wind down camp and prepare their surroundings for sleep. But if you get that surge of energy right before bed, you mess up your sleep and desync your homeostatic and circadian rhythms, which will block you from flow. That covers sleep timing, going to bed deaf and blind. The next lever is cold. During the pandemic, I was sleeping in a garden shed with my significant other. The shed had no central heating, so it was freezing cold. It was so cold that it was almost uncomfortable going to bed in the first place. But the funny thing is, during that time, I was having the deepest sleep of my life, validated by my sleep tracker. And that's because cold is incredibly important for sleep. You want to put your room at about 15 to 19 degrees Celsius, 60 to 70 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe even a little colder. It should be so cold that if you wake up, it's a little uncomfortable. A cooler environment helps to slow metabolic rate, reduce body temperature, and promote sleepiness. It also reduces nighttime wakefulness, sleep disruptions that can occur. If the room is too hot, the body has trouble with thermoregulation. This leads to restlessness, excessive movement during sleep, and nighttime wake-ups, which can spike cortisol and make it harder to fall back asleep. Adjust the air conditioning or keep the windows open. If you share a room and don't want to battle over the thermostat settings, use devices, pads, or mattresses the cool your side of the bed. The investment is worth it. It's not just so you can sleep better, it's so your flow state can be better the next day. The last lever in the 80-20 of high flow sleep is hunger. The number one way to get my sleep score as high as possible on my sleep tracker is not just leaving a little bit of time between my last meal and bed, like what's commonly recommended, but actually leaving so much of a gap between eating and bed that I'm slightly hungry going to sleep. And research backs this up. The rule is, eat 4 hours before sleep. Studies show this is associated with improved HRV. When HRV is high, the body can better respond to stress and recover from it. It's why longevity luminaries like Brian Johnson literally finish eating in the morning, given the impact it makes on sleep. Eating too close to bedtime can cause digestive problems that can interfere with sleep, which leads to heartburn, indigestion, acid reflux, and other sleep disrupting symptoms. Going to bed hungry is a positive signal of sleep preparedness. You also want to mind ingesting not just food, but substances. You want to cut caffeine and alcohol at least 10 hours before bedtime. Otherwise, they will still be circulating in your system while you sleep. That means if you're going to bed at 10 p.m., you want to stop those substances by midday. And when you track your sleep, which is something we'll cover in a minute, you can see the impact these substances have on sleep quality. Alcohol reduces REM sleep, which impairs memory consolidation and negatively impacts all the upstream benefits of sleep. If you like drinking, well, day drinking, funnily enough, actually turns out to be healthier for you. So maybe drink at brunch, metabolize it, and sober up before you end up going to sleep. And if you need a 5 p.m. pick-me-up, use nicotine instead of caffeine. Nicotine can enhance focus, speed, and reaction times and enhance memory. For flow, a small dose will do, about 1 milligram. It has a much shorter half-life, 2 hours, and if you use it infrequently at small doses, there's less risk of physiological addiction. All the same, it's a super addictive compound, so be careful of its addictive potential. As mentioned, another tip here is to track your sleep. Get a sleep tracker and pay attention to the 3 high flow sleep metrics. Sleep and wake timing, keeping your sleep to wake drives in sync, total time, getting enough sleep, and sleep composition, getting enough deep and REM sleep. And then look at your long-term trends by season and ensure they trend in the right direction. Don't obsess over the numbers or turn them into a source of stress, just learn from them and course correct until top-notch sleep hygiene is a habit. And to make this easy for you, we've put together a checklist of all the levers you can pull to get high flow sleep. It includes even more methods than what we cover in this video. To download it, just click the link in the description. By the way, we're aiming for 1 million subscribers by the end of the year. So if you benefit from my videos, please support the channel and hit subscribe now. As soon as we get to 1 million, I'll be giving away a free chapter of my upcoming book, which goes into way more detail on how to dial in your sleep to get more flow and maximize your performance. So to help unlock that, click subscribe and join the crew. Now that we've tackled the 80-20 of sleep, let's address another critical element, something that hardly anyone talks about but can make or break your ability to perform at a high level consistently over the long term. That is to proactively prevent insomnia. After suffering a head injury as a kid, I spent a year mostly in bed. Even when I healed enough to move about, in the mornings I'd watch 4 or 5 episodes of The Office in bed, and this ruined my sleep. My bed became a place of stimulation rather than rest. My brain learned to associate my bed with being awake. Nights felt like a blurry, frustrating limbo, never fully awake or asleep. It was a terrible form of self-inflicted insomnia brought on by pairing the bed with wakefulness instead of sleepiness. For some, this is the #1 reason why they struggle with sleep and should be the first thing they do to fix it. It turns out that 30 to 35% of people will at some point in their life have a bout of insomnia, which is much worse than just getting poor sleep. The key is to get ahead of this before it becomes a problem, because it can otherwise derail your life, sometimes for years on end. The good news is you can proactively guard yourself from getting insomnia in the first place by using a proven CBTI protocol, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia protocol. This protocol, which is rooted in classical conditioning, helps you break the negative association between your bed and being awake. You want to think of it like a dog trained to salivate at the sound of a bell. CBTI retrains your body to automatically connect your bed with sleep instead of with anxiety or stimulation. The time it takes to do this depends on how deeply the bed is associated with wakefulness. There are 2 steps to the CBTI protocol. Step 1 is stimulus control. First, you want to use the bed for sleep and sex only. Allow for nothing else in the bedroom. That means removing screens, clutter, desks, TVs, everything else. Charge your phone, ideally, even in another room. And if you find yourself awake in bed for what feels like more than 15 to 20 minutes, you want to get out and relocate to another room. Engage in a quiet, calming activity like light reading or simple tasks, nothing too stimulating, and return to bed only when you feel genuinely sleepy. Repeat this process as needed throughout the night to retrain your brain's sleep response. Then the next step in the CBTI protocol is sleep reduction. First, we want to track how many hours we actually sleep, not just the time we spend in bed. Then, temporarily, we want to restrict our time in bed to match our sleep time. For example, if you're struggling with insomnia and you average 5 hours of full sleep across a 10-hour window, you want to start with a 5-hour sleep window, which means you only allow yourself to be in bed for 5 hours total. The goal being to increase the percentage of our time in bed that we're asleep, rather than tossing and turning awake trying to get to sleep. This will be tough at first, but it creates the sleep pressure needed for deeper, more efficient rest. As your sleep quality improves, you can gradually extend your time in bed by small increments, keeping the percentage of time asleep in bed as high as possible. That's the key metric. What's key for this protocol to work is a fixed wake-up time always. Now, with the CBTI in mind, let's add that to our single sentence cue that sums everything you need to know up for getting high-performance sleep. So to get high-performance sleep, go to bed deaf, blind, cold, and hungry at the same time every night, and only sleep in your bed. Now, if you've done that and you're still having trouble sleeping, or you simply crave the edge that comes from elite-level sleep optimization, here's what you can do next. This is the long tail of sleep, the third piece. Now, I have a friend, we'll call him Alex, who got really into optimizing his sleep. If he wore a forehead strap at night that was supposed to beam theta waves into his brain for deeper sleep, he wrapped his entire bed in a copper mesh EMF blocking canopy to eliminate wireless signals. He even got a hyperbaric oxygen chamber for his bedroom. His room looked like a terrifying sci-fi sleep lab. But Alex's pursuit of sleep overshadowed everything else and started to stress him out. He was over-indexing on the biohacks at the expense of the basics. The lesson Alex taught me was this: don't be a dumb optimizer, don't overly biohack. Perfect sleep comes from mastering the fundamentals and not overlooking them on any given night. Just as 30 minutes of sleep is better than any nootropic, supplement, or tech device for optimizing brain function, 20% of the things you can do to optimize your sleep will give you more than 80% of the benefit. If you're 100 nights consistent with the 80-20 of high flow sleep intervention of going to bed deaf, blind, cold, and hungry at the same time every night, and you think you can eke out even more value from your sleep, then maybe consider adding one of these long tail interventions one at a time and continue to the bottom of the list that we're about to cover, so you can access flow with even greater reliability. The first is a power down ritual. The power down ritual is where you'll tie up all loose ends for the day so you can relax into the evening with zero cognitive load. That is, the number of items you hold in working memory. Lowering cognitive load is a key mechanism for triggering flow state. Think of every open loop as a fish hook tugging at you, pulling at your consciousness. For successful sleep, it helps to snip all those lines. The solution is to identify open loops, externalize them by writing them down, and then identify the actions required to move those things forward to get psychological closure. Doing this every night makes you aware of the root causes of open loops so you can eliminate them more fundamentally over time in your life as well. Maybe you're constantly open looping about a certain team member or a financial problem or a health issue. This process prevents the compounding of open loops because we can address those root causes. The next piece is to cut back fluid intake an hour to 90 minutes before sleep so you don't have to go to the bathroom at night. That moment of getting out of bed can be just enough to get a spike of cortisol, which can keep you up for hours afterward and make your sleep less restful. You can also add a pinch of salt or electrolytes to your last drink of the day. Now the next piece is bedding. A high quality mattress and pillow can make a real difference. This is one of those instances where there's truth in advertising. Over your lifetime, you'll spend about 26 years, a third of your life, sleeping. You might as well get a comfortable mattress that supports you in creating your flow state. Choose linens and sheets that help your body's temperature stay stable, like organic cotton. Subjectively, this can also make a positive difference in your emotions and mindset, and also create a positive incentive for hitting that bedtime on time because you want to get in to that crispy, lovely bedding. The next piece is gadgets. Cooling pads for your mattress can prevent overheating from waking you up. Pressure from weighted blankets can activate the parasympathetic nervous system and decrease stress. The next piece is supplementation. L-theanine promotes relaxation and alpha brainwaves, soothing the nervous system. Magnesium citrate, vital for many bodily functions, acts as a mild sedative, facilitating deeper sleep and decreasing nighttime cortisol. CBD, while still under study, indicates strong potential for increasing deep sleep, and apigenin found in chamomile tea may gently down-regulate the nervous system. Now, fair warning, you can go overkill easily with supplements for sleep and become a dumb optimizer. Keep it simple, don't turn sleep into a fuss. And a quick note about sleep medication. They come with several hazards, dependency for one, and withdrawal symptoms, such as insomnia and memory loss. The risks of sleeping pills may outweigh the advantages. We suggest avoiding them if you can and treating them as a temporary last resort. Now that covers the long tail of sleep optimization. To make it easier for you to use all of this, you can download the High Flow Sleep Checklist. Click the link in the description to download it for free, and it'll walk you through how to do all of these things step by step in a really simple way that you can also use over time and come back to repeatedly, and of course it's totally free. Now remember the rules we've covered. You don't even know what your potential is unless you're sleeping soundly every night. Successful sleep shatters the exhaustion ceiling, the hidden limit to your current performance. Sleep is a high performance state. It's not a passive state that steals time away from productivity. It's an active state that is productive in and of itself and also enables productivity and flow state. Your flow state gets created while you sleep. To get high flow sleep, go to bed deaf, blind, cold and hungry at the same time every night, and keep going until you lock all of these components in. Before long, you'll have consistent high flow sleep. In terms of boosting energy and cognition, there's no pill, gadget, time hack routine, or software that can compare to sleep. If all of the benefits of sleep could happen by taking a pill, you would never not take that pill. Sleeping well will elevate your flow proneness, productivity, and well-being more than any other intervention you can do. And I'm excited for you to get high performance sleep with consistency and shatter your exhaustion ceiling. Now, once you solve sleep, you're one step closer to gaining the ability to work without ever burning out. But sleep is just one piece of the puzzle. To become fully immune to burning out, click this video.